You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 72. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
This week, we are for you, dear listeners. Just kidding. So this is episode 72 of the Tricorder Transmissions, and today we will be doing our commentary on That Which Survives. We are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
And Craig, let me tell you, we got a big surprise for our listeners this week.
Yes, we talked to Mark Cushman for our Leonard Nimoy tribute part 2. And in addition to all of the great insights and memories and thoughts about Leonard Nimoy, we were able to get some other information from Mark that we think you are all really going to enjoy hearing.
Oh, man. I think we were blown away, as you'll hear from our reactions to what he was talking about. And he talks about 2 new projects, Trek-related projects that he's going to be working on, and both of which are pretty exciting. One of which is extremely exciting for original series fans, and one is exciting for anyone who's a Next Generation fan. So I know I was really amped up, and Craig, judging by your reactions, you were pretty amped too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let's jump into what Mark Cushman has to say about his upcoming projects, and we'll loop back with you guys when Mark is done.
Yeah, and we do appreciate, Mark, that you did decide to expand this to 3 volumes with a 4th on the way. Can you give us a little insight, at least, into when we can expect to see that 4th volume?
Yeah, it's about half done.
Wow.
And I had to take a break. I started it late last year after finishing book 3, and stopped working on it about 90 days ago to jump on this Lost in Space thing, because that's got to be out in September for the 50th. And they didn't want this one until the 50th of Star Trek, which will be next year. So I had time. And but the reason it happened is it started out as the last chapter of book 3. And I'm trying to wrap up book 3. I didn't want to end with the show getting canceled. I wanted to end with a chapter about where it went, not everywhere it went, but just getting us started in that upswing of the excitement of Star Trek rising up from the ashes, so to speak. And I'm writing this thing, and I'm doing research on it, and so much interesting stuff is coming up that I'd never known about, that has never been written about. And this chapter is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And poor Susan Osborne, who was doing the editing on these books, as I'd give her everything, and she'd cross through things and say, this is too much. That was her job. I called her up and I said, well, this last chapter, and she says, yeah, is it coming along? You think you'll be able to get about 20 pages? I said, I'm on page 90. and after she picked herself up off the floor, she said, you better let me see it. I sent it over, and she calls back and she says, this is great stuff. I don't want to cut any of this. And I never knew this. And did you know this? Did any of the other Star Trek people know this? And I said, no. And she said, I think you should just keep going. And this is the next book. And so that's how it came about. It wasn't planned any more than we had planned to do 3 on the original series. It was just there was so much there to talk about. So it's going to go into that. It's going to look at the animated series. It's going to look at the aborted Phase 2 series. And it's going to look at the start of the movie franchise. And it ends at a very interesting moment. It ends on the day that Gene Roddenberry gets closure on TOS because he wasn't being treated properly by Paramount. He owned 25% of the show, and they didn't give him a dime throughout the entire 1970s. They kept saying the show is doing red ink. Well, Wait a minute. It's the top show in syndication.
My God.
And then I find out that NBC wanted it back the year after they canceled it, and Paramount says no because they're making too much money off of it. That's why they gave him the animated show. So it's like these two stories don't mix. How can it be so successful that you don't want to give it back to NBC, and yet it's in the red ink, so there's no money to give to Roddenberry. So I had to do a lot of digging, and it took a very clever ploy on the part of Gene Roddenberry and his attorney to put closure on this whole situation, which set the stage for Next Generation and on. So it's going to cover that period of time as we see those 79 episodes come alive when they should have died, and become more and more successful, and the conventions, and then the animated show, and on as it's building towards what it's going to become. So this takes a look at the 1970s, and I think it's going to cap off this book series very nicely.
Excellent. Well, I know that we can't wait for it.
I'm really amped for that.
Yeah, and we hope that you'll come on and talk with us again when that book is getting ready to come out, so we can get some more great stories and help get the word out about this excellent series of books.
Oh, I don't know if I want to help promote it at all. I'd love to come out, and I got to tell you, for 2017, a lot of people asked me if I was going to do something on Next Generation. Well, David Gerrold, God bless him, gave me a giant box filled with memos from the first season of Next Generation, because he was there as they were developing that show, and all the memos between him and Gene and Bob Justman and Dorothy Fontana as they're all contributing to create Star Trek The Next Generation and get those first scripts written. And it's really an eye-opener. And it's sitting right here in my office. I'm looking at it. I've been sorting through it and putting things in proper files and scanning documents. So it looks like there will be a book on the first season of Next Generation for 2017, which will be the 30th anniversary of the first season of Next Generation.
Wow, I know there are a lot of fans out there that probably just jumped out of their seats, because there are a lot of Next Gen fans out there that would love to see that series get the treatment that the original series got. So, wow, I'm sure a lot of people are wishing that time travel existed so they could jump to 2017.
Oh, as we're all finding out as we get older, a year and a half goes by pretty damn quick.
It certainly does.
But a lot of people had asked me if I was going to do it, because I'd briefly worked for Next Generation and I knew a lot of people down there, and my answer was that if I could find a reason to do it. Well, the reason for me doing these 3 books that are out now was the fact that Bob Justman and Gene Roddenberry saved everything, and they gave me access to all these memos, and the memos tell the story. It tells the thinking behind every episode, and even the ones they were thinking, oh God, this one's not working. Too bad we spent $200,000 of Desilu's money on it, or else we'd take it out and bury it, But so I really wanted to know what they were thinking with the first year of Next Generation, what they were happy with, what they weren't happy with, and these memos have all that. Again, have that information. So yeah, if the memos exist, that's like me being able to get in a time machine and going back and bringing forward the artifacts for you guys to be able to see, so we know everything that went into the creation.
Wow.
So no, I'm happy to be able to do it, and it's David Gerrold that I have to thank for that.
It's really, really exciting to hear that, and I have to say I'm really, really happy to hear that you're going to be continuing with not 1 but 2 more Star Trek books for us to all to take in and savor and enjoy over the next couple of years.
Yeah. I just have to take a holiday and do Lost in Space first.
Yeah. Well,
which is a guilty pleasure, I gotta admit.
It's a nice little, I guess, palate cleanser to clear things up while, or maybe give you a little reset.
It is, it truly is, because when I finished book 3, my God, that was a serious season. There was just so much they were dealing with, and so much difficulty in getting that season done, with the budget cut and the ratings starting to slip, and NBC threatening to cancel, and the bad time slot, and Gene Roddenberry out of the building, and Bob Justman getting burned out, and it was just a struggle to get through. And you look at it, and you look at some of the fine episodes like All Our Yesterdays, and Requiem for Methuselah, which I think is pretty good, a little slow paced, but I think a really heartfelt episode, and The Empath, and some of the others that I think are quite special in their own way. Spectre the Gun, which I always like. Alana Troyes, which I always like. So they were able to, even at their worst moment, do some shining episodes. And you look at how hard they had to fight to get those done. The circumstances were so difficult. So after doing that, I needed to take a little break. Lost in Space seemed like a good place to go.
Yeah.
So I'll be coming back into the turbulent '70s and that first turbulent year of Next Generation. I haven't seen the thing William Shatner's done. I keep hearing about it. Chaos on the Bridge.
I wanted to see that. That sounds incredible. We saw a quick snippet, I think, and he talked about it at the convention in Vegas last year.
Yeah. I think it had some kind of distribution in Canada first.
That's what I
Yeah.
heard. I heard that it's out in Canada and it's not here yet, which is surprising because you think you could walk across the border pretty easy. But no, I haven't met anybody who's seen it. David Gerald told me he saw a rough cut of it, but he hasn't seen the final thing yet. But yeah, it should be interesting to look at. But it's going to be talking heads
Yeah.
about what happened during that first season, and that first season's 30 years ago. That's why I like to go back to the actual memos.
Sure.
Because right there, you've got the conversation happening in the moment. There's no chance of faulty recollection or biased or a strange agenda,
Right.
which you might have, or any trickery in the editing. You got to trust me to be editing it fairly, but I think from looking at those books that I do. I mean, I've had Walter and Leonard and so many people come forward and say this is good. I wasn't trying to lean it one way or another. I'm letting you see exactly what the conversations were, and I'll be doing the same thing with Next Generation. But as a fan of Star Trek, all the Star Treks, I can't wait to see Chaos on the Bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So, wow. So
Yeah.
we're getting a fourth These Are the Voyages book about the time period between the end of the third series and the first Star Trek film.
Yeah, basically all of the 70s.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear Mark's to read Mark's research into the creation of the animated series and the failure of Phase 2.
Yeah. And it's going to be really interesting, the Phase 2 stuff, because
Yes.
there was already a book that came out in the 90s devoted to Phase 2 that had some scripts and some story treatments and stuff. So it's going to be nice to see that story fleshed out even more with the meticulous research that Mark does.
Yes.
So that I'm really, really looking forward to. That is really a fascinating story of the Trek that could have been.
Yeah, judging by the quality of the first 3 books that we have, and I know that I've talked to other listeners about these books and how blown away they were by the detail included in those books. I can't wait to see how much deeper Mark is able to go with Phase 2, and if he is able to dispel any of the information that's already been out there that people may have already married themselves to as truth, because I know he did that for quite a bit of the original series.
Yes.
Yeah, so it looks to be really, really exciting stuff. And also I know that I've never been a huge Next Gen fan. I don't know about you. I mean, I've seen, a very small percentage of the episodes, but I did enjoy some of the Next Generation movies. So I'm intrigued about Mark's book on the Next Generation series, season 1.
Yeah, especially considering that he was able to get all of those reference documents that David Gerald had been holding on to. And you got to love any time that somebody holds on to history like that.
Absolutely.
Because, some people it's easy, and I'm guilty of it myself, of just being done with something and throwing it away. So thankfully, David Gerald, being the man that he is, and I guess the organized writer that he is he saw the value in holding on to all that stuff. And we're going to get a great book out of it.
Absolutely. And, just a little side note for our listeners out there regarding cutting room floor material or archival material, I have kept all of our original recordings for these episodes. And one day, perhaps if I ever have time, I'll go through and pull out some of the cutting material that's hit the floor over the last year and a half or so, or by the time I get to it, it could be 2 years or more worth of material. Maybe I'll put together a blooper reel or
Oh wow!
something funny.
So that means that eventually our listeners might be able to hear our Al Bundy impersonation.
Oh, perhaps I do have those recorded, as well as a lot of our other things, including our mythical Lost episode that we've
Yeah.
mentioned on the show before. And there are a lot of great side pieces that we had with our guests that have been on the show. Some funny flubbed intros and things like that. So maybe someday I'll be able to get some time together to put that together. So I have kept everything though.
Fun. Yeah, that's great.
So I want to also mention before we get into the commentary, and we put a tweet out about this, and we're going to put a message up on Facebook. But the show is going to be dark on March 25th and March 29th. So Craig and I will be taking a little bit of time off to do some individual vacations. So the 25th is a Wednesday. That's when we usually release our What Are Little Songs Made Of episodes with 5-Year Mission. We're not going to be doing that on the 25th. And the 29th is a Sunday, which is our usual commentary. So we will be back on April the 1st with an episode of What Are Little Songs Made Of. And the following Sunday, we'll be back with another commentary episode. And we apologize to all of you guys for being absent for that week. But unfortunately, no matter how we seem to try to line up the recordings prior, it just doesn't seem to be gelling well. So unfortunately, we're going to have to miss a week.
Yeah, but on the flip side for us is I'm heading west, you're heading south, and I wish you a really kick butt vacation.
Oh, thank you. It's for my girlfriend's birthday. We're going
Yeah.
to Florida, and I know you're going to Vegas for a birthday celebration, right?
Yeah, my niece's 21st. I'm going to my
Wow.
favorite city in the world.
Spectacular. And, well, one of my favorite cities in the world as well. So I will be envious of you being out in Vegas next week while I'm sitting at home.
And I will be envious of you when you are down at the happiest place on earth.
Yes, I will be going to Disney. I don't know if our listeners know that I'm a big Disney fan, and my girlfriend and I are very big Disney aficionados. So it's like a home away from home for us. So we'll be going for her birthday there this year.
Sweet. Say make sure you say hi to Mickey for me.
I certainly will, and in each incarnation that I find him in. So
Are you going to be able to see Jedi Mickey?
I have yet to see Jedi Mickey. I've seen the Sorcerer Mickey. I've seen regular Mickey, but I have yet to see Jedi Mickey. And I don't know. He may be one of those characters that only comes out during the Star Wars weekends.
Oh right, yeah.
I've seen Darth Vader. I've seen Stormtroopers, but no Jedi Mickey. But I know he exists. I've seen pictures of him. So I will be keeping my eyes peeled. That will be in the Hollywood Studios park. So we'll be spending a little time there by the Star Tours area. But I will let you know and try to get some pictures if I'm able to see Jedi Mickey.
Cool. And that's the park that also has the Aerosmith Rock and Roller Coaster, right?
Correct.
I love that coaster.
Yes. That's down at the other end near the Tower of Terror.
Yeah, and that's got one of the better queue lines as well in terms of keeping you entertained.
Yeah, well, one thing and I'm not a big coaster guy, but one thing I know about the Rock and Roller Coaster that's different from other coasters is they have a separate queue for single riders.
Oh.
So if you're riding by yourself, you can get into the single rider queue and possibly pass the line a bit quicker.
You know what? I like that though, because me and my brother went to Six Flags here in New Jersey over the summer. And it wasn't the busiest day, but it still annoyed me to no end how many cars on roller coasters they let roll out.
Yep.
With empty seats.
Yep. It's kind of ridiculous, and I think Disney has at least has a jump on that with the way that they queue people up. So not all of their coasters work like that though. So
Yeah.
I don't think they've implemented that system on some of the older coasters and some of the other parks, but at least the Rock and Roller Coaster does that. So if anybody out there is looking for to get on that ride when they're there, that's a little bit of a secret that you may or may not know about when you go to the Rock and Roller Coaster. So
haven't they also changed the whole way you get into the park too? Isn't there like some kind of like lanyard system now or something?
Oh, well, well, yeah. We're getting me into a side note here about Disney.
Well,
I
hey,
hope.
this is cool. I think our listeners are going to appreciate the extra content this week, considering we're going to be off for a week.
Oh, good call. Good call. So, forgive us if this is not your thing. Feel free to skip forward. But yes, they recently Disney has moved to a an NFC or near field communication style wristband as opposed to a card that you swipe to get in and out of the park. So they call them the Magic Bands. It's kind of Star Trek like, actually. So this is kind of quasi on topic. Um, so when you book a trip to Disney World, they will actually mail you these magic bands. They're kind of like a neoprene rubberized band that's waterproof, but inside that band is a chip that has a communications medium that when you get close to certain checkpoints, like the gates to get in or cash registers, things like that, you can put your wristband up against it, and it will read who you are and allow you into the park or allow you to buy things and charge it to your room, things like that. So
That's awesome. And aren't your fast passes on there now?
yes, yes. If you are there also is a smartphone app. If you have an Android or iPhone, you can get the Disney Experience app from the store, which will allow you to book ride passes. So what they call fast passes, which will sync up to your Magic Band. So we have a bunch of those booked already for our trip. You can go on and book anytime before you get there, and book rides that you want to ride. It'll let you book three at a time and in a block. So, say you're going on a Sunday, you can go to that date in the app and you can go to the park that you're going to and choose the rides you want to get on. It'll give you times to arrive. So, you get a window of about an hour for each ride. So, it'll say arrive between 12 and 1 for this ride, and then your next ride maybe be between 1 and 2, and then between 2 and 3. So, it'll line them up for you. And you just scan your band at the entryway to the ride, and it'll accept your pass, and you can jump the line and get up to the front.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And
it's pretty amazing.
are you doing any of the character meals?
This time we're not doing any character meals, but we do have some character meet and greet set up,
Oh,
so we'll
cool.
be able to. Yeah, we've foregone meeting a lot of the characters in our past. Whoever we ran into, we would take pictures with. But at this point, this time you can actually book those ahead of time. So there was a couple that I wanted to knock out. Like I wanted to meet Wreck-It Ralph, so we're
Sweet.
gonna do Wreck-It Ralph, and I think Buzz Lightyear I have set up to meet. And I think we're probably going to do a couple of the princesses for
Yeah,
my girlfriend.
sweet. And this is somewhat Star Trek related.
Oh,
Are you gonna make sure, or have you made your reservation at the Sci-Fi Dine-In yet?
no, no, we haven't.
Are you not a fan of that place?
I haven't been there yet.
Oh, really?
No, we do the '50s primetime diner.
Oh, that's good. But the Sci-Fi, I think it's the Sci-Fi Dine-In or the Sci-Fi Drive-In, is really cool. You eat in a car.
Yeah, no, that's it's the same place, the same place. So we've been there, we've been there. So yeah, there's a this that's the drive-in, the '50s
Oh,
drive-in style. Yeah, so
okay.
there's a couple that are similar,
All right.
but the food is phenomenal.
Yeah, I ate there once, and I was just so in love with the overall experience of sitting in that car, and they had all the movie trailers playing, and you know what? It's been a long time since I've been to Disney. I don't remember having a bad meal at that park.
No, we go full bore when we go. We get the deluxe dining plan and we just eat our way through the entire place. So you can kind of just get this dining plan and scan your wristband as you go and eat anywhere. So you kind of prepay for your food, and it's kind of flexible, and it gives you the ability to eat at some of the higher end places as well. So we have some nice dinners planned, but the diners there, the one like the one you're talking about, is all included in that. So we'll be
Sweet.
hitting we'll probably gain at least 10 to 20 pounds while we're down there.
But you also do a lot of walking, so I think you
Oh yeah,
offset it a little bit.
yeah. Well, we average, and I'm a smartphone junkie, so I have a step tracker, and I think last time we were down there in October, we were averaging between 17 and 20,000 steps a day.
Wow, that's almost double what you know, like what the average person normally does.
Yeah, well, you don't even think about it because you're
Yeah.
moving all over the place and you're constantly running between ride and restaurant, and so it's a great way to unconsciously exercise.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So sorry everybody for that diversion, but interesting side notes, and hopefully the technology discussion was at least somewhat up your Star Trek alley. So, Craig, are you ready to jump into That Which Survives?
Yes, sir.
All right, and that I love the term "that which survives" is actually just a chick, just a woman. She's the only one that survives.
Yeah.
But at any rate, That Which Survives first aired on January 24th of 1969, and the remaster was March 15th, 2008.
And we have the NBC press release issued November 11th, 1968. Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy face death on a hostile planet without food and water as the Enterprise is hurled 1,000 light years away from them in That Which Survives on NBC television networks Star Trek, Friday, December 13th.
All right, so we will start our scene-specific commentary. Cue up your episodes. We're going to press play in 3, 2, 1. Craig,
Yes.
I want to say right up front on this episode, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but when we talked to Mark Cushman, Mark had made some remarks about how upset Nimoy was in the third season with the writing of the Spock character. And I
Yes.
think this episode is
Ugh.
the pinnacle of the bizarre changes in the writing for the Spock character. Did you notice that?
This episode, Spock is almost insufferable.
I know, and it's so weird, and it sticks out in so many different interactions with different characters. And I you know what, and I didn't really notice it as much until I just recently rewatched this for this commentary, and just I was just taken aback by how often Spock is completely off-putting in this, and in such a way where he's kind of like a smart aleck.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like a Vulcan's approach. It almost seems like he's saying things to get a rise out of the person.
Yeah, like he's nitpicking people and correcting them just to make them feel bad. you
Yeah.
know. So we've got no Chekhov once again.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, no Chekhov. But the cool thing is that Sulu gets to be on the away team.
Yeah, look at him. He's got that smirk going.
Oh, how cool is that? And we've got another guy injected into this away team, and I think he's a geologist. Is it D'Amato?
Yeah, D'Amato.
D'Amato. He's injected into this away team here. Notice there's no red shirts going down. The red shirt gets to stay and operate the console. But so I thought Sulu being on the away team is great, and we haven't seen that for a long, long time. But I actually this particular section here, this scene. Is this the first time we've ever seen like a delayed beam out?
Yeah, I think so. Well, at least a delayed beam out that didn't involve some kind of transporter malfunction.
Right. Good observation.
We've seen like those false, false ones or whatever, but this was a successful transporter.
Right. And did you notice that while they were in the process of beaming, they were able to see what was going on in the transporter room?
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like they remember it.
Yes, they do.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do. They said that that Kirk asked McCoy, "Did you see what happened?" And McCoy clearly remembers.
Okay.
But I thought it was interesting. You could see the fuzz. Their molecules are starting to break up, but they're still able to see and hear what's going on around them.
Yeah.
I think that gives beaming a whole different perspective, doesn't it?
Uh-oh.
Now, here's a significant part of this episode, by the way. Another thing that I wanted to mention, that I wanted to bring up. I think, now, listeners, feel free to point out that I might be incorrect on this, but I don't think that I am. I think this is the first time that we've seen, excluding the cage, this is the first time we've seen a woman at the helm of the Enterprise.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah, Lieutenant Radha. That's her name, and she's an Indian descent, and she took Sulu's place at the helm. So, and if we remember our Star Trek history, the female character, or the number one character played by Majel Barrett in The Cage, was one of the ones that the network said they wanted off the show.
Yeah.
So interesting that we see a female back at the helm here in season 3, which is pretty far removed from that original pilot, but we've kind of come full circle at this point.
Yeah, and this is an episode of sort of phantom characters because we get the return from a long time ago of what, Dr. Mbega?
Yep, Dr. Mbenga shows up. Yep, Dr. McCoy's substitute.
Yeah, that was way back in A Private Little War.
Oh, it was back in season 2.
Yeah.
Back in season 2. So interesting that he makes a resurgence.
It's almost insulting, to see him. No, no disrespect to the actor.
To Booker, yeah.
Yeah, to Booker Bradshaw, but it's like it's almost insulting to the viewers here. Like, so they've had all these adventures that we've been watching them on, and this guy's always been somewhere else.
Yeah, he's always kind of in the bathroom or hanging out in his quarters or in the mess hall.
I really wonder what drove them to bring him back.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating though that character makes a resurgence here. Did you notice that it says story by Michael Richards?
Yes, and I thought of Kramer.
I
that
did
was
too.
Actually DC Fontana. That was one of her pen names.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just funny that it happens to be the same as Kramer. Did you think that the stinger was long?
Oh yeah.
Was that the longest stinger? I had to look and see if that's the longest intro we've seen because it felt really long.
Yeah, well, the better stinger would have been you cut it in the middle of that beam down.
True. That would have been very mysterious.
Yeah, because then you don't know, oh my God, what's going on during this beaming procedure. That's a stinger that works for me.
No, I like that.
That's one that makes me get up and go to the fridge and grab another soda, with a little bit of, quickness in my step.
Yeah, you want to get back and watch what happens. Did you notice that Sulu automatically assumes that the ship blew up?
Mm-hmm.
I love that he jumps to that conclusion after everything they've been through in all their prior adventures where things just vanish and get teleported from place to place. Sulu automatically assumes that the ship just exploded.
Yeah.
But it's funny because later on in the episode we see some recollections of prior adventures. Oh, and here's Dr. Mbenga, by the way, has resurfaced. And I wonder if back in the day when this originally aired, if anybody actually remembered him from the prior, because he's only in 2 episodes of the original series, one in season 2 and one in season 3.
I gotta say, I can't imagine that many people. It had to be somebody that was really, really hardcore and possibly meticulously taking notes for each episode.
True. Yeah, I can imagine.
The only thing that really reminded me was the name.
Yes.
Mbega. Or Mbenga. Because that's such a distinctive name. So I was like, oh, we've seen this guy before. I had to look up what episode it was. But I mean, I can't imagine that in first run. Like I said, you had to be an Uber fan, I think.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Mbenga was that he seemed to be like an expert on Vulcan anatomy in the prior episode that we saw him in. But in this one, he doesn't make any mention of that. He's just a regular old doctor in this one. But
it's not needed for the plot in this episode.
No, not at all. Did you also notice that in this episode, Sulu makes the reference to something Russian as opposed to Chekhov?
Yeah.
So Sulu talks about a Russian meteor incident. And that's also, speaking of that Russian meteor incident, that's another example of alternate Earth history.
Oh, right.
In the Star Trek universe. So, we determined that there was a section of Earth history up to a certain point in the Star Trek universe that is a complete duplicate or mirror of what happens in our actual physical world. And then all of it splinters off and becomes the Star Trek universe. So I'm assuming that this Russian meteor incident is part of that splintered universe where we're meant to believe that, this is our future.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting that they throw those little tidbits in there. So everybody over in Russia, watch out for that meteor.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your eyes to the skies.
So I think this is one of those awkward interaction
this is
between
one of
Spock
the worst.
and Scotty.
This is one of the worst. It's a prolonged one. It's very, very awkward. So much awkward dialogue here that it's almost cringeworthy. Like right here, Scotty said, is kind of using some colloquialisms where he's talking about how, he can give a little bit more than warp 8 and he's going to sit on the warp engine and coax it into giving him more. And Spock takes it upon himself to stop Scotty on the way out of the bridge and tell him, how that doesn't make any sense and it would be degrading. I mean, like, it's so out of character for Spock. And, I'm so glad that we sat down and talked to Mark Cushman before we recorded this, and he went through that, talking about Nimoy being writing all those memos about how dissatisfied he was with the writing of the Spock character, because this episode completely and totally showcases that.
Yeah.
For me. I mean, I haven't picked up on it so far, really, in the third season up till this point. I mean, maybe there's a little off moment here or there, but this episode, I think, is the real pinnacle of that bizarre Nimoy writing. Bizarre Spock writing.
Yeah, I've noticed some quirky performance things that bother me, but this was really the first one where the character just seems so not right on the page.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're going to see so many more of these throughout this episode. But one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and that was in regards to Sulu. If you notice the way Sulu's conducting himself on this away mission, doesn't it seem like he's been on a bunch of away missions before?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he seems so confident, and he knows what he's doing. It just seems like he's been off the ship so many more times than we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, he has to have been on an episode off ship, after shore leave, right?
You have to think he's been on a bunch of them.
Yeah, but I mean, have we seen? I mean, is shore leave the only other time we see that?
Well, we see him off the ship in The Enemy Within, right?
Okay,
but that was before shore leave.
Yeah, it would be amazing if shore leave is the last time we saw him on as part of the away team.
Yeah, we really have to go back and look at that. And I apologize. I'm sure plenty of listeners are shaking their fists at the podcast right now, saying,
well, hey, it gives things to post on the Facebook wall.
Yeah, please do. And also, by the way, a quick little side note is that we've got 4 members of the away team, and we've got 3 tricorders. Is that the most tricorders we've ever seen on an away mission before?
Oh, wow, yeah.
So look, McCoy's got one, D'Amato's got one, and Sulu's got one. So Kirk is the only one without a tricorder at this point. So I don't recall ever seeing 3 tricorders on an away mission prior to this.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Cool stuff. And here is a great example of that Star Trek lighting.
Yeah.
When she first appears, her face is shadowed. So she's a little bit obscured. I love that lighting. But it's outdoor.
Yeah.
Right? It's outdoors. So they had to put something up in front of the lights to create that shadow on her face.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely phenomenal use of lighting and staging in Trek. And that's one thing that this series has that I absolutely adore is that use of lighting.
Yeah. And now we're getting another one of those really cool, at least for me, sort of horror type scenarios in the front half of this episode where you've got this, it's referred to as a ghost planet. You've got this mysterious woman. You've got this really weird interaction between her and the crew member here. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I really enjoy these Star Trek episodes that sort of go a little into the if it wasn't Star Trek, it could become a 60s sci-fi horror movie.
Yeah, good point. It's almost like a Jason Voorhees moment.
Yeah.
Where she's kind of walking towards him, lumbering slowly with her arm outstretched, asking to touch him. And you just know something's going to happen because we saw her take out the guy behind the transport console earlier. But, and of course he doesn't actually radio anybody or he doesn't try to shoot her. It just kind of happens as a little off-camera death there. And notice this episode does not support the red shirt mythos.
Yeah.
No red shirts on the away team, so I guess we've come to discover that in the absence of red shirts, blue shirts
Yeah.
take the deaths.
But it's also interesting that there's no protocol in place to, to require um, a red shirt.
That's a really good point. So they beam down to an unknown planet with no security detail. That's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's a topic for discussion. You would think that a potentially dangerous scenario, Starfleet protocol would dictate that security beam down with them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And because you've got two, well, actually, I guess Sulu is also key, but you got two really senior officers. The chief medical officer, the captain of the ship, and the main helmsman are all beaming down into a potentially, an unknown, potentially dangerous scenario.
Right.
With no security whatsoever. They bring a geologist with them. But at any rate, so Kirk has attempted to dig a grave for D'Amato with a phaser, and we've uncovered some very tough rocks that are not melted by the shot of the phaser, which we've come to discover is 8,000 degrees centigrade, is the heat generated by a burst of energy from the phaser. So I thought it was kind of a cool little tidbit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty neat that we find that out. And this is the second time we've seen a crew member from the Enterprise buried off ship on a planet. So the first time was Galileo 7 back in the first season.
Yeah, and that was another moment. There's been a handful of moments over the course of the series that really made me, I don't want to say depressed, but, we had that moment earlier in this season where the girl's out on the planet and gets blown up. And this is one of the ones where I just thought, like, here you are in the middle of space, far from home. You die, and your final resting place is on this planet that potentially no one is ever going to come back to.
Yeah, and it's uninhabited. So your body is just laid to rest by itself, solitary. That is a very depressing and humbling thought.
Yeah, and McCoy even had the line about being alone or something, and Sulu had a response, and McCoy said, "Well, we're not out of this yet," which it sort of really sold the scenario that they were in, and the fact that it was in the back of their minds that they were in some pretty severe danger.
Yeah, absolutely true. And another awkward moment between Spock and Scotty. Spock cautioning Scotty not to be overly emotional and keeping his eye on his instruments. And look at this piece of equipment that Spock is fiddling with. And what is that thing? He just picked it up off the ground. Oh, but I'm going to come back to that later because we do see it several other times. But they've created a quasi headstone.
Yeah, and here's that conversation I was referring to.
For D'Amato. Did they use a phaser?
Yeah, I think
to inscribe the name D'Amato into the rock that they used?
Yeah, Kirk's got some skills.
Yeah, man, that's pretty impressive. I guess they had to put the phaser on low power and kind of burn the name. They even got the apostrophe in there.
Yeah.
So pretty. Oh, and here is a fantastic throwback.
A callback, yeah.
A callback to my favorite episode of Star Trek. Sulu mentions the Horta, not by name, but he mentions the monsters from Janus 4. So, our Horta lives on in the memory of Sulu. That's fantastic. I love when they reference prior episodes and prior adventures.
Yeah.
In a series that's typically known for not having great continuity.
Right.
It's always nice to see that happen again. But once again, Spock is far too. He corrects people far too much in this episode.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where in the past, if he corrects somebody, there's a reason for it, or it is not done with that bite. Whereas here, it just really seems petty. yeah, he's turned a corner
Yeah.
in terms of the level of annoyance.
And fortunately, he turns back in future episodes. And another cool aspect to this episode that I really like is that you get the you get some more Scotty and the ship, bonding. So we get to Scotty is very in tune with what's going on with the ship, and he feels, quote unquote, he feels that the ship is not right, that something's wrong
Yes.
with the ship. So I mean, we get to know how in tune Scotty is with the ship itself, and knowing what we know about Scotty now after seeing the entire series and all of the movies. I love seeing little bits that develop that bond with the ship.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and this episode does a really good job of that. So now we're back with this mysterious female, and it seems like she has the power to read minds.
Yeah.
So she's able to read this poor crew member's mind, I guess, and she asks him to demonstrate what this panel is for, and he lies to her, which is great.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic that he doesn't give up information about the ship and its operations, which we've kind of thrown back in Star Trek's face many times throughout this series that we've done, that they give up information about the ship too easily. But she's somehow able to read his mind and know that he's lying and discern the true nature of what that panel is for.
Yeah, and if only he had called to Scotty sooner.
I know. Maybe Scotty could have come in and helped him, but unfortunately, this mysterious woman has claimed yet another innocent life. And again, Spock is just completely unconcerned. So he does put out a security alert, which is nice. Which I'm glad that he was at least doing that much. But shift back to the planet, and here's another great moment in my mind where Kirk is leveraging some of his past experiences and adventures to try to figure out what's going on here, and he does some theorizing about who created the planet that they're on and where they might be. Maybe they're they run through some scenarios where maybe the planet is hollow and the people are inside and we're not seeing them because we've seen hollow planets before. So nice to see Kirk leveraging some prior experience yet again.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of our prior episodes, back in the first and second season where he just seemed to walk into every situation blind.
Yeah.
But this is great.
The concept of this man-made or this artificial planet is really fascinating.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, right.
If you've ever read that, where they had the whole custom planet making aliens. So I love that idea that there are beings powerful enough out there in the universe that can create actual entire planets.
Yeah.
Being in a funny way of making custom luxury planets, as in the books, Hitchhiker's Guide, but or a Star Trek where we don't really know what the purpose of this planet was.
No.
They never do approach that topic. But,
yeah, and I like how they're taking shifts here, and I like that use of the tricorder, where Sulu set it up and then rested it on the rocks.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. It's kind of like a beacon.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And I don't know if we've ever seen a tricorder used like that before.
No.
Yeah. Another bizarre Spock interaction with Dr. Mbenga here that just passed. I don't really know what to make of it. But I guess they're trying to figure out what killed the crewman, and Spock is just really, really terse with poor Dr. Mbenga. So, but at least they're figuring out what's going on, that they've got an intruder on the ship, and Spock surmises that those beings are probably on the planet as well, and she knows how to operate a tricorder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's amazing Sulu didn't shoot immediately.
Yeah.
Knowing that poor D'Amato got offed by something they didn't know, that they hadn't seen, you would think he would immediately want to fire off a shot and at least stun her
Right.
and get Kirk and McCoy up. But unfortunately, doesn't happen. But he does come to the conclusion that this was the person that killed, or the entity that killed D'Amato, and he wants to put her in front of the captain, at least for some questioning, because she does appear to be human, right?
Yeah.
So she's not ethereal and she's not semi-transparent or anything. But I love this line from Sulu here. I don't want to have to kill a woman.
Yes.
Keep back, stop or I'll shoot. I don't want to have to kill a woman. And then he shoots the ground in front of her feet.
No.
So, interesting that he would just assume that she's a normal, average woman,
Yeah.
right? And not some sort of, android or bizarre alien creature or whatnot that she should benefit from his morality, as it were, or his sensibilities, where he doesn't want to have to kill a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times we've seen, even in the Man Trap, we've seen a woman who was not human.
Yeah.
So you would, and he was in that episode. He was well aware of that incident. So you would wonder, he would think back to that. And there's an equally strange line here from Kirk coming up as he's questioning her. He asks, "Are there men on this planet?"
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was yeah, there it is right there. Are there men on this planet? I thought that was a really weird thing to ask. Why is he asking that question?
Yeah.
Like I was like, all right, you're not listening to me. Are there any men here I can talk to? So, a couple bizarre writing choice, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looking at, I guess maybe in the context of today, in the 2015s, that seems like an awkward statement. Maybe in the late 60s it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, overall, the writing problems we have in this episode are weird because we already talked about the story credit, but the teleplay itself was written by John Meredith Lucas, who worked on Star Trek before this. He wrote The Changeling. He wrote Patterns of Force. He directed The Ultimate Computer. He wrote or he directed The Enterprise Incident, and he wrote and directed Alan of Troyes. So it's not like he wasn't sort of ingrained in Star Trek. So
yeah, that's a good point, and it kind of makes it all the stranger to me. And once again, before that scene changed back to the Enterprise, we saw Sulu laying on the ground, and he had remarked that she's so evil, yet she's so beautiful.
Yes.
Very weird choice of words in my mind.
Yeah, and that word's used. The beautiful's used a lot throughout this episode.
Yeah, it's used more than once, and very odd that they would draw that parallel in regards to her. And I'm it kind of takes me a little out of the episode, just like this exchange between Spock and Uhura kind of took me out of the episode. And Spock's snarkiness kind of knows no bounds in this episode, as he uses it on just about everybody. Even poor Uhura bears some of the brunt of Spock's snips. But so we're the ship is going faster and faster.
Yeah, and is Spock holding that device you referenced earlier?
Yes, sir. He's holding that phantom device again. It looks like it has a bunch of buttons, multicolored buttons on it. I don't recall having. There it is again. It's right in his hand. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. So 15 minutes. Scotty estimates 15 minutes, and Spock before the destruction of the Enterprise, and Spock corrects him yet again and says 14.87 minutes.
Yeah, and I like how Scotty says that difference it won't matter. It won't help us at all.
Yeah, so yeah.
Those extra fractions of a second. I like how Scotty sort of just gave it back to him at least.
Yeah, at least somebody's kind of going back at him, and maybe
But
Spock actually wasted those 0.13 seconds correcting Scotty.
yeah, but that's what makes the writing there so weird. Because if a character knows enough to sort of poke back at Spock, it means that they were consciously writing Spock this way for some reason.
Exactly.
Like you're almost like, well, has it been 7 years? Is he coming up on Ponfar again?
Oh, good point. I didn't think of that. Maybe that's an explanation for it. Yeah, maybe it's Ponfar is next week, and he's starting to feel the hormones taking effect. And so here's another throwback to a prior episode that I was kind of glad they threw in, and that's that phaser on overload
Yes.
thing again. And I'm always glad to see a technological anomaly reused, because we've seen phaser on overload after this episode. So always cool to see some of those things survive
Right.
from episode to episode. And I this is really cool. This is one of the things that I love about these remastered Blu-rays, is that when you get a close-up of some of these panels in engineering, you can see all of the writing
Yeah.
that's on them, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense what it says. But I love that they were the attention to detail was such that they labeled all of those buttons
Right.
and dials that are on those panels that are now behind Scotty, if you're watching along with us. And I find it fascinating that with the limited budgets in this season, they went so far as to do that, knowing full well that back in 1969, that detail would be completely lost
Yeah.
when this episode was broadcast over the airwaves and hit, televisions of varying quality. I don't think anybody would have been able to make out what those characters underneath all of those buttons are. Even in this scene we're watching now, I can clearly read a lot of these, the numbers right next to Spock's head. There's a number 78 there, and YEM, and it's very interesting that we're now watching this on this remastered Blu-ray, but I back then nobody would have been able to see that.
Right.
So phenomenal stuff. Very, very cool that we're able to see this stuff now. And this section here kind of reminded me almost of Wrath of Khan in a way, where if Spock had actually gone through with this and crawled through this crawl space, this tube himself, that would have been very, very, very reminiscent of what we see in Wrath of Khan. But Scotty decides to do it himself.
Yes.
But it seems like it would have been a good thing for Spock to do, because he is a Vulcan, and Scotty says, no human could withstand that, the energy that happens inside that tube. So it would have made sense for Spock to do it, but I guess we'll have to wait until the movie to see him do that. But we now have 12 minutes and 27 seconds left.
Yeah, so we've got the ticking time bomb that Star Trek loves so much. And I'm wondering if this device that Spock has was sort of like the fad of the week. It was like, the pet rock or the Rubik's Cube of that, that was the in thing, that season.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe he's got like a little a bean counter on there, and he's walking around counting things and tallying things. Maybe that's his way of leading. Kirk doesn't do that, but Spock is very meticulous. Oh, sorry about that, everybody. There's the overloading phaser. I for some reason, I guess my notes are kind of in a weird order, but
what an explosion too.
Yeah, huge explosion, and I love how Kirk says everybody get down and then lobs the phaser off into the distance. So ineffectual, that explosion. Nobody got hurt, thankfully.
Yeah, but it's kind of a scary concept in the fact that she's able to disable their weapons remotely.
Yeah, pretty cool. Another way to disable Starfleet technology. So I love this. I love when they shove Scotty. They load him right in. Good old Jimmy Doohan.
Yeah. They
pick him up and shove him into the tube.
Yeah. Not a big fan of this effect.
No, me either. I mean, it's you can see a lot of the matte lines.
Yeah, it's almost fitting that we've had minor complaints along the way, but it's almost fitting that my biggest complaint is probably in the third season.
Yeah.
Considering that in the third season, the show was working on a reduced budget. So it would almost be kind of neat if the remastered folks on the effects end, they were like, well, sorry, guys, you've got less money this season.
That would be funny. But I love this hero moment, though, from Scotty.
Yeah.
That he's putting his life
great.
on the line.
Yeah.
And I love that we're seeing him in this crawl space, and it's a really cool camera angle.
Oh, here we go. Refrain from any more subjective descriptions.
Yeah, and of course Spock, being as verbose as he is not saving any time with this. It's amazing to me that the logical guy is spending more time correcting people. You would imagine that the logical guy would just say, "Get the job done." And
there is that device again. Yeah.
What is he doing with that thing? It doesn't have a screen on it.
Yeah.
So what is he looking at? Another interesting little technical device there that Scotty placed on that panel.
Yeah.
Almost looks like a roulette spinner.
And he's talking about being jettisoned, too.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. We got the jettison pod thing coming back in this episode.
I wonder if that's like a handheld version of like, a futuristic version of like Farmville.
Oh.
And he's working,
Oh, you know what? Maybe that's a Star Trek era Tamagotchi. Maybe Spock's got a virtual pet that he has to care for. I'm wondering. Great thing. So we're gonna find out that the ship is up to warp 11.2, which is interesting. It's not the highest it goes, but once again, the ship is going beyond the specs the ship was designed to withstand.
Yeah.
So our favorite non-human character, the Enterprise, is once again being pushed beyond its theoretical limits and holding up pretty well. I think, isn't this another one of those moments where Spock is once again off-putting? Oh, here's the pod jettison system. Spock is mentioning the pod jettison system. And she'll jettison the pod at the first sign of trouble. So fantastic. The jettison pod returns again. God, we had such fun with the jettison pod button.
I was so happy to hear the word jettison in Star Trek when I watched this episode recently.
So here's another. Is this another one of those pieces of this episode where you find that Spock knows how to do something better than the person that's actually doing it?
Yeah.
So wouldn't it have made more sense for Spock to just go in the tube?
Mm-hmm.
God. So back on the planet once again.
I really, 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 for whatever reason they decided, I love the fact that Sulu was part of this away mission.
Oh, me too. It's good to see him off the ship. And see him have more lines and more of an active role.
Yeah.
In the episode.
It made me realize, really, this episode, it really made me realize, and we know that he left, he missed most of the second season because he was filming the Green Berets. But it made me realize that a lot of the characters on this series really didn't get their due until the movies.
Absolutely right.
Sulu's definitely one of those characters.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, he's a captain of his own ship in Star Trek 6. So he definitely grew through the ranks and was promoted, and it becomes his own hero, I guess, in Starfleet, captaining his own ship, which is fantastic.
But it also really impresses me that, they brought everybody back for the movies, whereas if you go back and watch the series, you always had that, Chekhov and Sulu seat wasn't always occupied by Chekhov and Sulu.
Right, and when there's times where Uhura didn't show up or Scotty wasn't there, and so I mean, but it's great that they brought back the core group of characters, and even Janice Rand comes back.
Yeah.
So fantastic. She's serving on Sulu's ship in Star Trek 6 too, which is really cool. But here's another weird thing that I noticed, and maybe I'm bizarre for noticing stuff like this, but remember earlier I referenced there were 4 guys and 3 tricorders. Now
Yes.
I've got 3 guys and 2 tricorders. What did they do with D'Amato's tricorder?
They buried him with it.
I mean, don't we have inventory? Don't they have to account for that equipment?
Maybe it's his personal. Maybe it's like one of those things where, like, you ever work one of those jobs when you were younger where you had to buy your uniform?
Good call.
Maybe it's your gear.
Oh, maybe he paid for the tricorder.
Yeah.
And I guess nobody else can use. Maybe it's got some sort of an identification system where it only works for him. Oh, interesting observation.
So here's another effect that I'm not thrilled with, the sort of, folding up.
Really, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we differ on that.
I have to go back and watch the original effect and see how it's different.
I kind of liked it because it wasn't like the prior effects, and it wasn't just a straight cutaway.
Yeah.
Where she just vanished with that boing sound, that they like to do.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked about Lee Merriweather yet.
Go for it.
And she is the guest star this episode, if you will, for 1935, and she's the second Catwoman we have seen on Star Trek. Now we saw Julie Newmar on an earlier episode, and in the Batman movie in '66, Lee Merriweather replaced Julie Newmar as Catwoman.
Yeah, a lot of Batman crossovers.
Yeah, and a lot of we saw Frank Gorshin earlier too, the Riddler earlier this season. And one more note about Lee Merriweather: she was Miss America 1955.
Oh wow!
And I actually met her at a Miss America event quite a few years back. An ex-girlfriend of mine, her family were big Miss America fans, and when it was still being held in Atlantic City, I actually think it is back in Atlantic City now. But before it moved to Vegas for a couple of years, they used to go down every year. So one year I went down with them, and they had like an expo before the actual pageant, and I got to meet Lee Merriweather.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah,
very, very cool. So this episode has one characteristic that I really, really like, and that is, there's been times in the past where I've questioned the tactics of the aliens and said, if they just tweak their strategy a little, they would be so much more effective. And I thought to myself, if she didn't announce who she was for, they would have very little defense against her, right? Because if she says, well, I'm for you, Kirk, they can block her from Kirk. So in this episode, she actually does learn from that and attempts to deceive them by not saying who she's for.
Right.
Later on, I thought that was great. That early on in the episode, as she's saying, "Well, I'm for you, Sulu. I'm for you, James Kirk," and I thought it was great that when they get into the final chamber, she doesn't actually say who she's for right off the bat. I said, "Yeah, good on you, alien. You actually learn from your mistakes." Oh, funny. Speaking of learning from your mistakes and things that kind of seem a little bit awkward, Spock just runs a scenario through the computer, right, to see if it will work.
Yeah.
And the computer confirms that Spock's solution will work, right? Mm-hmm. Why can't the computer just do that?
Yeah.
If the computer knows that's the right answer, why can't the computer just interrupt that fuel flow or whatever on its own? Why does it have to rely on somebody else to ask it first?
Yeah, that's an excellent observation.
Oh, man. So they get up to warp 14.1, by the way, in this, but before Scotty is able to save the day.
Yeah, and Scotty's saying to pull the plug on him.
Yeah, Scotty is the guy who's gonna take one for the team on this episode. And here's almost a moment of redemption for Spock. He doesn't continue being the curmudgeon in this episode. He actually doesn't eject Scotty. He gives Scotty an extra moment to come through and be the hero.
Yeah, and how do you think he makes that decision?
Wow. That's wow.
No, I just mean, is it one of those things where he's Like, I mean, because
You know,
it seems illogical.
well, you know what? I'm gonna say that they have mere seconds to live. So what does it hurt to let Scotty keep trying at this
Right.
point? I'm thinking that, Spock being the logical guy, that would be the logical decision. If you had 9 seconds to live, what's the point of jettisoning Scotty and killing him, 5 seconds before everybody else dies?
Right.
Why not give him those extra few seconds and see what happens? Because you're not going to be able to get down there and try again
Yeah.
in that amount of time. So,
And here we get the groan-inducing thank you exchange.
yeah, this is really tough. This was almost cringeworthy for me. I yeah.
Oof.
Wow. This again reinforces the fact that this is a one of the probably the best representation of that change in the writing of the Spock character
Yeah.
in the third season. But
So here we are at the final level.
yeah, you got a hovering square in the ceiling here with some really interesting lighting effects on it. And here's where they're asking her who she's come for. They think they've got her figured out, and she ain't buying it.
No.
She's not going to tell them. She's going to keep them guessing. And I love that Kirk orders them in a circular formation. Like, she couldn't just reach out and touch whoever she really was for. I mean, McCoy's mere inches from her hand right there.
Yeah.
And she finally just says, all right, you guys are too wily for me. I'm for you, Kirk. But she's also got them outsmarted. The computer's got them outsmarted, and they're going to make one. See, they always assumed that she was just one singular person.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that the computer could make as many doubles as it wanted, and triples and quadruples.
Yeah, and this is where the episode really starts to disappoint me.
Really?
Because, well, it seems like this is one of those story callbacks that we've seen before. The idea of this ancient, sort of remnant of a lost civilization.
True. Yeah, true. But some great split screens going on here.
Oh, yeah, tremendous split screens.
Awesome job on that. For the time period, very convincing.
Yeah, and some great body double work.
Oh,
here
great!
as
Yeah,
well,
the
for
hair
overhead
and
shots.
costuming
Yeah.
from behind, phenomenal work. Absolutely phenomenal work. But there's some doubling right there. You see a little blurring going on there, but still, very well done.
Yeah, well, I'm sure at that point they were stacking negatives or
Yep.
exposing negatives multiple times.
And amazing that Spock can beam down to the exact spot.
Yeah. I
Where they
love
have-
the red shirt.
The red shirt takes the shot. Now, why are the women impervious to phaser fire, but the computer is not?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the red shirt just seems like he's so going through the motions.
He's like, yeah, the look on his face was a little bit weird. A little bit weird. But here's a... We haven't seen an interaction between Kirk and Spock since the Stinger.
Yeah.
So that's a bit different than what we're used to. Kirk and Spock being separated. The computer was able to throw the Enterprise 990.7 light years across the galaxy. That's a long way.
Oh yeah.
That's a long way. So I wonder how long were Kirk, McCoy, and Sulu on the planet?
It couldn't have been that long because they didn't have any kind of food or water.
Yeah, and they're not suffering any ill effects. No dehydration, no starvation, so it couldn't be that long. And here's the reveal.
Yep.
The reveal, the historical record tape, which somehow has decided to play. And we're going to find out that there was some disease that killed all these people, and it was some sort of a byproduct from creating the planet. So essentially, they killed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Once again. Yeah, another society has killed itself. So I guess that is bringing us to the end of the episode.
Yeah, and I gotta say this. Early in the episode, I groaned at something you mentioned. And that was a groan of me saying, uh-oh, I think I have to reconsider whether this is essential or not.
Oh, wait, whoa.
Yeah. Well, and I'll defer to you here because I think you take better notes than me. But it seems like there's enough technology stuff going on in this episode to almost cast that essential vote.
It's a
We saw
tough one.
we saw the sort of new ways that they use the tricorder, um, and I think there were a handful of other moments that we highlighted during the episode. So I almost got to say that just for all of the little details sprinkled throughout the episode, um, I might have been blinded by my hatred of Spock in this episode. But I'm thinking that this might be essential.
Wow. Well, that's a really tough call. Yeah, I'm sure we could debate about this back and forth for quite a while, but I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 at this point, and not necessarily because of the technology, but and this is what's really dragging me down, is that this to me features something that I think is kind of along the same lines as Plato's stepchildren, and that is the first time we see a woman at the helm of the Enterprise.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a fantastic moment for the series,
Yeah.
and I mean, you have to know about the cage, and you have to know about Majel Barrett being number one, and being at the helm in the same exact seating position. You know, I don't know if that makes this episode essential though. I'm really having a tough time calling it essential, but I think it at least deserves an honorable mention for that point alone. That we finally get to see a woman flying the ship.
Yeah.
You know, fantastic moment. I'm really 50-50 on this one.
Well, flip
hard
a
to
coin,
tip
do
it.
whatever you have to do.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna do something that I've never done before, and I'm going to say that I'm going to give it the honorable mention nod for the woman at the helm of the Enterprise, but I'm going to call it non-essential, but provisionally give myself the option to change my mind in the wrap-up episode at the end of the season.
All right. Yeah, and maybe we'll reach out to some of our contributors who help us out on those wrap-up episodes to maybe help sway things.
Yep. So I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50 at this point. Like one little nudge could push me over the edge. But definitely the honorable mention nod stands.
All right. Well, very interesting because when I woke up this morning, I didn't think I was going essential.
All right.
But either way, hey, that brings us to the.
So you're going essential.
I think so. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going the non-essential provisionally, and you're going essential. All right.
Yes,
just to clarify.
Yeah.
All right.
And that brings us now to the end of our episode, Jeff. And we're both now an hour closer to vacation. So again, we're going to be taking off the 25th and the 29th. We'll be back on the 1st.
Yes.
And Jeff, again, enjoy your vacation. I know I am going to take full advantage of mine. And I already anticipate all the fun that I'm going to have. But even if we're away, we can still access all of the social media accounts that we manage. That includes our Twitter account, TTT_pod. And I always like seeing Mike shout out to us and a handful of other podcasts that he's listened to help get him through his workday. So, Mike, those tweets are always appreciated.
They are.
You can also find us on Facebook at the Tricorder Transmissions and at our website, thetricordertransmissions.com.
Well, the title of my particular episode was That Which Survives, and I played Lucira, commander of the Calandrins, who had died many, many years before. The computer used my image to to kill, and of course, I being a commander, a soldier, but not the killing kind, didn't enjoy that. She was called, at one point someone said, or maybe it was maybe it was TV Guide, said the sad-eyed siren. Every time I know when they graphically took me out of a scene, there was a wail, a very plaintive cry as I went into a computer blip, I guess it is. I don't know what you would call it. But it was on and out. And that, though I didn't do that, somehow they did it, you know, magic of television. It gave the feeling of the woman, the sadness of her. But I didn't know that that was part of it until, you know, I saw it on the air. No one had told me that that would be that, you know, how I would leave each scene.